So a few years ago, I stepped down as dean. I used to be dean of this place. And I had time to start working in some of my areas of interest again. And one of them is Taylor. And I did some presentations on it, and I did some updating and a little writing. And then Lee Dirks, who is at Microsoft, I taught in Lee's class a couple of times, MSIM class. And Lee said, you know, Mike, if you really want to work on this and write it up, I really would be interested in doing it with you. And so we started talking about it and written. And then finally, in 2008, we wrote our first paper on this. And so first thing we did is to rethink the user view a bit. Remember, Taylor talked about users. And the way that Taylor and a lot of systems people think about it is a single user in front of a single system and interacting with the system. Even if it's a library, it's still a user going to the library. You interact with the student registration system, and it's you and the system, right? Well, one of the things that Lee and I started to think about is that there's context. It's not just user, it's users. And I'm not just an individual, I'm connected to all kinds of things, right? It's kind of like that Verizon commercial too, you know, where they show the network and it's dozens of people or whatever. And so so Lee and I started thinking about users in a little broader context, right? And where Taylor talked about criteria of choice and values added, and then value added processes, we thought the use of the term values was confusing because it's used in different places in different ways. And he actually talked about values even up in criteria. So we decided to simplify that a bit. And we came up with user criteria, values added, and system processes. System processing meaning any capability, function, whatever, that the system could do in order to add value in order to meet the user criteria, okay? So now we thought, that seemed to go over pretty well. And then we began to look at Taylor. We looked at it and we wound up keeping, and by the way, in my opinion and also Taylor, that first column of user criteria, it was pretty set. The middle column of values was not comprehensive, okay? But he tried to be inclusive, but it wasn't. And the system processes for Taylor were all, those were just examples. Those would change all the time. And so we adopted that as well, that we're trying to lock these in, to say that are these truly the criteria? We're recognizing that the values might change, but to see if we can kind of, and all of these system processes are up in the air, because system processes can change. All right? So we did this. What we wound up doing, if you look at the original one, is we took cost and time, and we put it here under efficiency. And then we put effectiveness, we kept that there and added some other things. And we called that performance. So that was one of our big changes. And then, over the years, when I had taught this and worked on it, I found that I thought that, and Lee agreed, that Taylor had missed one major area. And that was the aesthetics, entertaining, and the fun part. For a long time, I used to call the criteria fun. And again, I'm going back to my own days of working in the schools. Little kids would stand in line to use an electronic encyclopedia and wait, but there were a bunch of print ones right next to them, but they never use them. Why? Because it was more fun to use the electronic. And sometimes we do that as well. All right. So pleasing became ours. And we developed that, we gave a couple of presentations, we wrote it up, and that was Eisenberg Dirks. There's also a graphic of this that my friend Dave Lankus from Syracuse did for us to show that this is pretty solid. It's the users, or the user in relation to the criteria, and then there are different values, and then that the system processes can change. This is the kind of exercise that I have my class do. I give them this, and I said, okay, let's look at an information system, and let's analyze it from a value-added perspective, and you could do the same thing. So you've got this now. The one you have is based on the TEDS model, not the Eisenberg Dirks, which is why the last one, instead of saying pleasing, it says affection or affection. We'll talk about that, but don't worry about that. So here's an example. This is the thing I always like to start with my class, because it really gets them going. Think of cell phones. Why do you own the cell phone that you have? Why do you have the phone you have? Just tell me why. Why do you have your cell phone?
A friend was giving it away.
A friend gave it away, so it was free, it was cheap, right? So that's performance cost saving, right? Why do you have your phone?
Same.
Somebody gave it to you? What about you?
I can connect with a lot of people.
Connect with a lot of people gives you a lot of capabilities. There's a performance thing there as well. Why do you have a...
Because I have to be cutting edge and have the latest device.
So you need the coolness factor and stuff, which is probably effective to a degree, right? And so you start to do it, and you see that different people choose for different reasons. And then we can analyze, well, what makes your phone cool? What value is added to make it cool? So give me an example. What kind of phone do you have?
I have an iPhone.
You have an, well, that's passé. Not very cool, but okay. But you bought an early iPhone.
The first stage.
And why? I mean, besides the fact that it's cool, what value? What was there about the iPhone?
The fact that the browser promised to connect me to information that I would not have had as easily when I was out and about.
So it gave you. So there was a performance thing there, right? Maybe I'll do it this way. That added to it. But I would also say, was it the aesthetics? Absolutely, right? Thin, really cool, and that whole thing. Entertaining. Yeah, might have been some of that. You see, it engaged, it stimulated. So you see how the values, and then we look at what were the system processes that added to those values. Well, there was the design, there was the gaming aspect, the visualizing aspect. You see, so you can see how it starts to connect. Now, those of you who are interested in cheap, right? I don't see a system thing like this, except the fact that, there's probably it's your family network or something that you're connected. It's not this system; it's a different system. And you can see how we begin to link system processes with values. Okay. Another example that seems to work in my class is we go over car dashboards. I'm predicting a revolution in car dashboards over the next 15, 20 years. I think eventually a car dashboard will be blank. They will be fully digital. And you, as the owner driver, will get to select from various things, and then the dashboard will be created for you. I mean, we can do that right now, right? There's no reason why we shouldn't have a fully digital dash. If I like an analog speedometer, I can have it. While my wife likes the digital, when she gets in, she gets the digital. When I get in, I got this. Right? I mean, I think that's pretty cool. But we talk about what makes a good car dashboard. And there's adaptability. There's ease of use, right? There's all kinds of aesthetics and other things. And then the other thing we do is look at old, I'm feeling lucky. Right? And I don't know if you remember, most of you look pretty young, but when Google first came out, what were we using before Google? What was the #1 search engine? It was Alta Vista. Alta Vista was the #1 search engine. And why was it Alta Vista? Primarily because it had lots. It had more than anything else. It wasn't better in terms of search and whatever. Yahoo did pretty well. And Inktomi was a biggie, and that's what Microsoft was really using, even though they didn't call it that. Right? And there were a bunch. And then Google. Why Google? Why? From a value-added perspective. Was it ease of use? I mean, is ease of use part of it? Yeah, you bet. I mean, it's just there. It's just a box. Unbelievable.